So this is my pitch proposal for my FMP project called After. My name's Amario. This is just the contents of the slideshow. So the format that I've chosen to do is a 3-minute short film based around the word bereavement. I believe this is the best format for what I'm trying to do because it's the most effective way to tell the story that I want and intend to. Any other format wouldn't really get the message across the way I want it to. My target audience is young adults aged 16 to 21 who are based in London and are maybe of a lower standard of income because that's the kind of area that I grew up in. So I want the target audience to relate to the main cast as much as possible. So probably black or ethnic minorities would be more my demographic. So the synopsis for the story. The story will follow Anthony, a young man who grew up in Edmonton with his best friend Cameron, but his life takes a turn for the worse when Cameron is in a car accident and doesn't make it. The story will follow Anthony as he tries to cope with the loss of his friend by going to all the places that they grew up together and experiencing how different things are now that his friend is gone. Each location will trigger a different one of the stages of grief for him, which are denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. So the genre for the film is a drama, more specifically a character-focused drama, as it solely focuses on the characters and how they deal with the severe loss. The interactions between the characters themselves are not just the characters in the world. That's more how it's going to work. The camera work and the characters will be the main ways in which I drive the story, and it will heavily rely on the performances of the actors and my skills as a director and a writer. The characters, there are 3 primary characters in my film. Anthony being the main protagonist of the film. So Anthony, a smart, dedicated, kind guy who tends to close himself off from people easily. But he's best friends with Cameron and he's Divine's younger brother. He desperately wants to leave his hood and make a better life for his family. Cameron is a laid-back, funny guy who is always up for a laugh. A big-hearted joker, he always wants the best for his people and tries to bring a smile on everyone's faces as much as he can. He's Anthony's best friend and is a serious grounding force for him throughout their lives. His death is the moving force of the story. And Divine, who is smart, caring, and sarcastic. She is Anthony's older sister and the guiding force for him and Cameron throughout their lives. A responsible, determined person who had to grow up a lot faster to take care of her brother and deal with all the things that her life threw at her. So the rationale and feasibility of my project. I believe that this project should be made as it will give the audience a different perspective on how grief can manifest itself. And it is a lot more complicated than people might believe. I want to have this film to add something to people and to make them go away and think. I also believe that that more on a personal level, this will give me much needed experience as a screenwriter and a director. And the feasibility, this production is very feasible. I'm currently putting together a crew who has agreed to work for free, so voluntarily, as I have not a very big budget to work with. It won't cost me anything to film the locations that I want. The filming will take place over the space of 2 days in 5 different locations, so it will be more time consuming than anything, but cost isn't really a big factor. A lot of the pre-production and post-production will be done by me, so if I divide my time properly, then I should be fine. So my influences and research. I've pulled from a range of influences for my film. I've looked at directors such as Christopher Nolan and Steven Spielberg to see how they create tension and make you care about the characters. I've also looked at other short films such as the Oscar award-winning Dear Basketball and the award-winning Leave Me to see how they create a concise narrative in such a small amount of time. And for my research, the main things that I've researched during this whole process is the 5 stages of grief, which are, as I said earlier, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. I have read about how they manifest themselves in different forms, sometimes don't even follow that specific order in which sometimes they're said, jumping around from the different stages. I've also asked people that I knew about their experiences with grief and how they have learnt to deal with it. I did all this to make the characters in my film feel real and so that I don't misrepresent a thing that everyone will have to go through in one point or another. How will I include diversity? In my film, almost all the characters in my film are from an ethnically diverse background, all having either Caribbean or African heritage. I have reflected this in the diversity of my cast and crew, as all of my cast are black and the crew comes from a bunch of different backgrounds, from Brazilian to Russian. I do this so that the audience can relate to everyone on screen in one way or another. So this is the production schedule. So week 1 is obviously getting started, coming up with the idea and picking a word for my project. Week 2 was the start of the research and the creation of this PowerPoint to pitch it. Week 3 is presenting the PowerPoint. Week 4, which is this week, I think, I will be doing the risk assessment. And then from weeks 5 to week 7 is when I'm going to begin filming. So from next week, I've gotten most of the casting done, so I'm going to go out and start filming on location. Then from weeks 8 to 9 will be the editing. Week 10 will be the presentation of my project. And week 11 will be the evaluation. Technical requirements. So for the technical requirements, the only thing that I'm really going to need is Premiere Pro for the actual editing of the film, Audition for any sound editing that I need to do afterwards, and Photoshop for any graphics that I may need. So if I decided to make a poster to go along with it or something like that. These are the 3 main things that I'll need for the post-production of my film. I won't need any other packages. The equipment list, costumes and props. For the equipment list, I'm going to need cameras, microphones if I can get a hold of them, tripods, or cameras wise, a stabilizer, so if I wanted to do any moving shots, and any lighting equipment if I can. I'm still working on how to get a hold of that. For props, just little, there's not going to be a lot of props, seeing it's just going to be everyday things that people carry in them, so phones and backpacks, and it'll be a bit of travelling for the main character. And costumes, for most of the film it will be casual clothing, and then 1 pair of formal clothing, as there will be a scene that takes place just after a funeral, so that will be needed. And winter clothes, seeing as I'm not sure if the weather's going to change as quickly as I hope. The casting crew is something I've paid special attention to, as without a strong team in the front and behind the camera, my entire project could potentially fall apart. So I've taken time to find people who I know are experienced actors and cinematographers to help me realise the vision I have in my mind. I'm currently in the process of casting the main trio for my film and have gathered together a small production team to help me. I've gotten advice from directors and screenwriters that I know to get a different perspective on how the story should progress, but I'm ultimately directing completely by myself. Since I don't need a lot of characters in the film, the casting isn't as stressful as it may have otherwise been. Location. So the locations I'll be filming at are outside Hackney Town Hall, Bounces Road in Edmonton, Forest Gate, outside the Tottenham Stadium, and Jubilee Park in Edmonton. All these locations will represent a different stage of grief for the main character. Altogether, it should take about 2 weeks if I stretch it out along the time I should. Since all these locations are public areas, no booking or extra expenses will be needed. This helps in regards to budgeting. Lighting and sound. I don't have any equipment of my own for lighting. I'm planning on asking the college if they have any, but if not, I've checked the weather forecast for the days that I am filming. I know that it can be risky, as the weather can be very unpredictable sometimes, but it should be fine, as the forecast says that it should be sunny on those days. I am planning on having sunnier lighting for the flashback scenes, and the darker lighting on the scenes that have taken place in present day to create a good contrast. And sound, in a similar situation to the lighting equipment, I don't have any of my own, so I'm going to ask the college if they have any equipment I can use to make the sound more clear and crisp. If not, I'll have to make do and do all I can in audition after the filming is finished. This film will be shown in the theatre at City in Islington in front of a large group of people on the 18th of May 2020. As by then it will be completely finished. Thank you for listening. Any questions?